is there any last pieces of information about yourself you would like to share with people today before we go?
Well, of course, because of my background, I am an idealist, but I really feel that just giving won't solve problems. You have to find the actual solution, and usually it's technology. And with the technology comes the financial solution, which is why in the next interview we'll discuss the fintech we came up with, which I believe is a major solution to this problem of degrading infrastructure. And welcome everyone to the CEO briefing. That's a little tease on an interview series. We'll play some of it more, but a great outfit is helping us with shareholder awareness called North Equities. And despite being Canadians, I think they're pretty good people. Just kidding. I was born in Canada, so I can say that, right? So water is the new gold. And we are monetizing water because until recently, it was primarily a government business. And it's just like the New York subway system in reverse. The New York subway system started out commercial, which is why there's so many subway lines that converge on Wall Street, because they were all in competition. And then, of course, got nationalized by the city of New York. Now these things are happening in reverse, and water is one of the major events. All right, Thursday, October 13th, briefing number 182. And yes, there is a new beneficial income asset, water. All right, as usual, we have our safe harbor statement, disclaimer on the offering, which you should always do your own due diligence on, of course. We got some coverage in the water trades. For a long time, we were not focusing on the water trades. We were trying to, get some headway with mainstream media. But the water trades are important because they show up in web searches. And they're also very good for business, obviously. So we got a little piece in Water Online. It was about this cool thing where these kids, these South Florida students, put together a project, which there they are, St. Mark's Episcopal School, and they launched this thing called Sea Lab, which is a tidal pool that enables them to basically explore water. And I made a comment about that. And this is the kind of thing that sort of keeps us in the game, so to speak. And we're going to be doing a lot more of this Water World, Water Online type stuff. It's very important. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and play a couple interviews as North Equities moved in to start spreading the word about us. So let's go ahead and play a short one with me and a short one with Ken. Here we go.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us here at Origin Clear's channel. Just want to let you all know what we're going to be doing with this interview series here. We're going to be going through company updates and industry updates, answering any questions you guys have for us. If you have any, don't be shy, and please send them over, and we will, of course, be introducing members of the team. So who better to kick us off for video number one than Chief Executive Officer, Chairman of the Board, Riggs Eckelberry. Riggs, how are you doing today?
Michael, I'm great. Thank you very much. And since the hurricane passes by, we're super happy.
Good. Glad to hear you're in the clear down there in Florida, Riggs. And what I really want to do is get to know you a little bit and get the origin story of Origin Clear, so to speak. So first and foremost, tell me about your past experience. What really makes you tick as a businessman?
Well, that's a really good question because I had an early career in the nonprofit space. First of all, I was raised internationally, so I have no home, kind of like bummed about in the Caribbean and Europe. And, my dad was the Mad Men guy, like very, very typical 50s type exec. I got bit by the nonprofit bug, and as part of that, I actually became a merchant mariner, sailed the seven seas, all that good stuff. Finally, in the 80s, I got really fascinated by the potential for high tech to transform our society. And as you know, this is just when businesses were starting to move from the paper records to the computer records and so forth. And that's what I jumped into in New York in the 80s. And that was a learning experience. Try having 12 people with a payroll every 2 weeks in Manhattan. That was fun and different. But what I learned from that was that tech really is transformative. It makes big changes happen. And eventually, I gave away that business to my best salesman, and he's done a great job with it. I moved on to LA and ended up in the .com in the 90s, which was perfect for me. I loved the fact that you could use computers not just to calculate, but to communicate. And of course, we've seen that happen. The world is really communicating on the computer big time. And I had to learn so much during the .com, and I think started going up the ladder, so to speak. And by 2005, I was the number 2 of a company that was going on to the NASDAQ. It successfully did. Mm-hmm. But I saw that there were cracks in that company that could not be fixed. And I also felt, like all number 2s, that I could be a better number 1. So I spoke to a fund that I'd gotten to know, and they said, yeah, Riggs, you could be a CEO. But we're not doing tech anymore. We're doing green. And specifically, we think that algae is the next biofuel. And do you want to launch a company in the algae space? And I'm like, okay. In fact, I had a brother who had some intellectual property in the area. And we launched a company in the algae space. And I had so much fun with that. I was on all the top, mass media shows and so forth. And I was called Algae Man. It was a lot of fun. Unfortunately, fracking arrived. Cost of crude oil dropped below $50, and all of a sudden, algae was a science experiment. Mm-hmm. So I'm not accustomed to just giving up. So we pivoted, and our technology for extracting algae from water became a technology for extracting toxins, sewage, et cetera, from water. And that became the company that was eventually called Origin Clear. Mm-hmm. And we then learned so much about the water industry because it's essentially unchangeable. It's very set in its ways. So basically what we learned, algae was like, who knew? It was brand new. There was no existing world of algae. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, water has been around for a couple hundred years. And it's very set in its ways, probably rightly so because of public health. But at the same time, we learned that it's very hard to change, and there's change needed in water. We've seen that happen all the time. Jackson, Mississippi, the water ran brown. Why? Well, it turns out that water infrastructure has been neglected at least since 1960, and it's gotten worse and worse. So we have a problem where the central infrastructure is decaying in this country, and in other countries, it's not at all. Like, look at India. There's like basically no infrastructure. So there's a real problem with central infrastructure, and it won't be solved centrally, right? Definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting a different result. So the solution then is to unburden the central system with do-it-yourself water treatment by businesses and agriculture, who represent about 90% of all the demand.
What's really interesting, Riggs, and one of the reasons why I would like to dive deeper into this on the next video is water is, if not the most important thing, one of the top 3 most important things infrastructure wise for virtually any country to have any level of success in health at all, right? I mean, poor sanitation, poor access to water is one of the leading causes of death in almost any nation that doesn't have quality access to it. So I'm real curious to hear your thoughts deeper on related to ours falling apart, because that's not something I would like to see happen either. But pulling the conversation back to you for just the last little question here, Riggs, what is it like being the chief executive officer? What do you handle now that you're in that role?
Well, it's a really good question, because for a long time, I didn't have a good bench. It takes a while to build your crew. And, I've been around other execs and film directors, for example, who they took their crew with them, because that's the value. Once you have your team, that's the real asset. And so it took me really until 2018 to literally 10 years to finally get a team of top technologists, top managers, really great business development people, et cetera. And that's when my life turned to just a hectic, feed the fire, to, okay, we got something going on. I can actually breathe and think and get strategic. And that's the story for the last 4 years, what we've been doing.
Interesting. I've definitely heard that before. It's obviously not just one person ruling the ship. It's a team of people. And I've also heard it described as, instead of it being a pyramid shaped top down thing, as the CEO, you're kind of the root of a bush, trying to enable everyone to grow as best they can in their respective areas.
It makes a lot of sense. Another way to look at it is a sort of a 360 look, where you're the hub and you're trying to reconcile the full 360-degree view of everything that's going on. And that can become a trap, or you can rise above it and have, a great view of all the competing needs and bring people to bear on the problems, so it's not always you.
Well said. Well, Riggs, this has been a great introduction to you. Thank you for coming on. Is there any last pieces of information about yourself you would like to share with people today before we go?
Well, of course, because of my background, I am an idealist, but I really feel that just giving won't solve problems. You have to find the actual solution, and usually it's technology. And with the technology comes the financial solution, which is why in the next interview we'll discuss the fintech we came up with, which I believe is a major solution to this problem of degrading infrastructure.
Perfect. Well, Riggs, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you have any questions, don't be shy and please send them over. Riggs, thank you. Look forward to chatting again next time.
Can't wait, Michael. Thank you.
Excellent little interview. And there's going to be a lot more of this. And obviously, it's like the tree that falls in the forest and nobody sees it or hears it. Did it fall? So obviously, it's all going to be about the distribution that this outfit gets for us. And we have high hopes. I'm now going to move on to the same interview of Ken. I haven't seen it. So Ken, I just hope you did a good job, because, we're rolling with it.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us here at Origin Clear's channel. We have another special interview for you guys today, as we sit here with the Executive Vice President and co-creator of Water on Demand, Ken Berenger. Ken, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Perfect. Very glad to have you on. So similar to how we did with Riggs, what I'm real curious about is your past experience prior to getting involved and your progress to where you are today. So before you got involved with Origin Clear, Ken, tell me about what you were up to and what really makes you tick as a businessman and entrepreneur.
Okay, very good. Well, going back to the beginning, I was a retail broker back in the very early 90s. So I've got a 35-year career in various parts of being an entrepreneur, finance, and so on. So investment banking, real estate financing. But I was a retail broker back in the very early 90s. Prior to the TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab era, where retail became kind of a different animal. It kind of evolved into, many of your folks became money managers. But I did that as a very young man. Wall Street became a little tough to just traveling there every day. I lived on Long Island. I lived in Manhattan for a while. And after, I don't know, the early 90s, I became a little bit, working on Wall Street, I became acutely aware of the opportunities that were out there in all kinds of other businesses, right? Because you're constantly underwriting these companies, and you're seeing about all these other opportunities. So becoming a little bit frustrated with retail, I branched off and got involved in a lot of real estate financing. I ran several firms, marketing companies that were able to do outreach for mostly C2B, customer to business type things, legal firms, ran a mortgage bank for a while, real estate financing. That ran up through to about a decade ago. And I did a lot of elite sales training. I was brought in by folks to, basically train sales forces. I had done that pretty successfully with stockbrokers. I basically told them how to present themselves, how to prepare, to show up to work with all of your ideas clear, be able to how to convey your ideas to your customer. And for good or for bad, I was noticed by a gentleman who turned out becoming a friend. Called me. I trained a bunch of folks that they had come in, and about a year later, he called me and said, I had a couple of businesses that were running. It was good. Money was coming in. It was comfortable. I was living on Long Island. That wasn't so great. But I got a phone call and he said, look, I'm a president of a public company, small, micro cap company. And we think we're really, really close to being able to do something great, but we really need capital. I heard you speak, blah, blah, blah. Can you raise money for me? And, up until that time, the Jobs Act and raising money for, micro cap companies and private placements was something I didn't even entertain. Well, I had a pretty successful business that was running. It wasn't something that required all my time. So I said, you know what, sure, let's do it. And I kind of took my old set of skills from, the early 90s, from 25 years ago now at that point, and put them to work on developing a way to raise money for these, private investment into public entity type companies. I did that really well. It went well for about 4 years. My contract was up and I was kind of doing a month-to-month thing. And a mutual friend who I worked with from way, way back when also knew that I was in the space and asked me, he said, I know a fella that this incredible company. He's a genius, but he really needs, he needs that thing, he needs someone that can help project the message of what they're trying to do. I think they can be a great company, but he really needs, they need someone to raise capital for them. Okay, great. I met Riggs at that point. We did a quick phone call, and I think I was at the end of my contract, and I said, you know what, let's do this. And I think I started the very next month. That was almost 4.5 years ago. Since then, so I came in as a contractor, right? I basically had a marketing firm. I had folks that worked the phones. Remember when people used to sell stuff over the phone, not Zoom?
Classic, yeah.
I had a whole room full. I had space and a dozen guys on the phone. Phoning prospective investors, calling up, the usual folks like me, right? And was very successful at it. So I kind of took that whole operation, brought it over to Origin Clear, and was able to establish a real good, solid marketing arm for the company in very old-fashioned, investor outreach. I came in as a contractor, and I worked that way for a while. But as this started to develop, Riggs and I would get on these calls at 11 o'clock at night, and I would start I'd have ideas on how we wanted to structure the offerings, on maybe how different creative ideas on how we wanted to work with the company. He said, look, I want you to come in. I want you to, I want to, this is the same philosophy I have. If he's an agency guy, his loyalty is to the agency. If he works for you, then his loyalty is for you, right? So he had a similar philosophy, right? He felt I had a lot to offer. Hopefully he was right. And I came in as a VP of business development. I was developing the Origin Clear business with Riggs. He was kind of my co-strategist. That developed for quite a while. And in the meantime, we got the company really in good shape. Our financing was strong. The way we were raising money, we weren't going to these lenders that are very common in the market or in the microcap space. We were working with your mainstream, high net worth accredited investors who liked the idea, who were going to take a little bit of their more aggressive capital, and understood that in a couple of years it could be, that moment, right? And that's a good, strong investor base, because these folks, they understand what you're doing. They understand you're building something. They have foresight, and they also have a little bit of patience. They're not looking in 6 weeks going, how are we doing, right? They're those angel and not quite angel, but close to an angel type of investor. So as we began to really accelerate these efforts, Origin Clear began to make a couple of really good moves. Hopefully I had something to do with it. Certainly Riggs had everything to do with it. But we made a couple of very smart acquisitions. We brought in some talent. We began to build a team. So at first it was just Riggs. Then it was just Riggs and I. So it was like two guys with our backs to each other, trying to knock off all the bad guys,
Classic.
And after a while, we got really good at that. And we would have these late night calls and we'd be finishing each other's sentences, so it became kind of a mind meld, and it really became a really good partnership between he and I. So we got to a point where we were great with capital. We had an amazing team, a great COO, a great CFO. We had progressive water treatment. We had modular water systems. And COVID came around. And we kind of had that, oh crap moment, what are we going to do? We thought the world was folding. We didn't know that at the time the government was going to hand out $6 trillion of money to anybody who could fill out an application, right?
Yeah.
But at the time, we really thought that it was going to be, what we experienced in our own growth as a company, and finally getting these operating units that have a huge demand for product out there, but it was always getting stuck in the money. 8 out of 10 of your targets, I need $1 million system. The only thing I'm missing, guys, is $1 million, right? So these are your small to mid-sized companies that are the most cash strapped, where access to capital is the very, very hardest, yet they make up the overwhelming majority of the market. And they're also the overwhelming majority of the opportunities in the market, the folks that can't say yes, right? So we developed Water on Demand. And it started out basically with an idea of be the bank, provide the financing. So as I took on a larger role and a lot more creative input with putting the Water on Demand project together, I was brought through as executive vice president. So really, it's essentially Riggs, myself, on the executive side, not on the operations side, and it kind of just funnels down there. But we're still, Batman and Robin. We're kind of that team that does most of the creative thinking. I'm more of the creative and communication side, and Riggs is magnificent at taking my communications and organizing them and helping put them together in the corporate structure, so they're able to resonate through to our admins, and we're able to execute.
Well, Ken, it sounds like you're bringing a lot of experience to the table. I'm glad you could kind of walk through your role for us a little bit. I guess the last thing I really want to know from you is really what is the real kernel or the diamond in Origin Clear and inside of Water on Demand that really keeps you so interested and passionate moving forward?
It's the single largest potential wealth creating event of our lifetime. It's water as an oil well. It is literally the most valuable commodity on earth that has never been monetized ever until now. And it enables not only guys like us, accredited investors, but literally the whole world can be a direct investor in actual water treatment systems and have a measurable impact on the quality of human health around the world and get paid to do it. Water is the single commodity on the planet that is immune to demand destruction. We see what's happening in the market right now. We're about to go through what many say is, it depends on who you listen to, but the optimists say it's going to be nasty, but we'll be all right. And then the other side goes, it's hell on earth. It's going to be hell on, guys like Ed Dowd, who I think is absolutely brilliant, says it's going to be hell on earth for 10 years. But here's one thing for sure. As populations increase, as populations move out of the cities, the need for clean water distribution systems will be there. Water on Demand literally connects a end user to a manufacturer to an investor, all through an Airbnb or Amazon-like marketplace. It allows for the world's first true private utility, and the ability for ordinary people, as well as the more affluent, to be direct ownership, like energy. People have preserved their wealth for 4 decades in the energy model. This is water, it's an oil well for water. Mm-hmm. And I think I think at a time where even assets, real estate, energy, everything's upside down and topsy-turvy. You don't know where the heck do I put my money? One of the most powerful messages is the way we've structured this investment. It is look, you can't be first in energy. Energy works, right? You can't be first. You can't be first in real estate. You can't be first in gold. You can't be first in any of the things that you think may or may not protect your money right now. You can be first in water. This has never been done before. And we've put together a structure that I believe 10% of your portfolio in water on demand can turn your entire upside down current asset portfolio and write it, make it right. Okay. And we actually have a way of calculating that. So we can send people to a calculator. They can plug in their own numbers anonymously. I have $1 million in the market. I'm down $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, which they are. Okay.
Yeah, a lot of people.
By simply taking 10% of their assets and putting it into a securitized, revenue generating, royalty generating asset with even stock grants attached to it. So there's liquidity events as well.
Mm-hmm.
They can take 10% of their portfolio and actually rescue their entire overall, they're essentially dollar cost averaging their entire asset portfolio lower.
Wow.
And that's exciting.
All right, Ken. Well, I'd love to dive into this further across these multiple interviews we're going to be knocking out here. But so far, I think you did a great job really introducing yourself, talking about your role, and talking about the passion of why you are here. So thank you so much for coming on, and thank you everybody for watching. If you guys have any questions for Ken, I am sure he would happily hear you out and answer them. So don't be afraid to send them over. And Ken, any closing words from you before we go?
Yeah, if you want to find out more, if you want to use the calculator, if you just want to ask me questions, you can go to oc.gold/Ken, and get on my calendar.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for your time again today, Ken. It was wonderful meeting you. Look forward to
Pleasure meeting you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
We don't often get a debrief from the self-effacing Ken Berenger. And I think we learned a lot more about him and what he's about. So that is really wonderful to hear. Let's see what's going on here in the chat lines. Keith Rutten says, Ken is a great communicator. I couldn't agree more. All right. And then let's see what we got here. Bobby Rowe, please explain the technology behind OC. Our technology is very simple. We have a set of 5 patents that we have licensed for a very long time worldwide around modular water systems, how to deliver water systems in a box, as we call it. So modular water systems is our prime technology. It is taking off. In fact, we'll be talking about the fast-growing pump station business, which is a very specific business that we are starting to really make some traction in. So that's our primary technology. Now, what goes into those? We have some technology with it, but we also are willing to let anybody else put somebody else's technology in that box. So it's really a delivery method. And Dan Early, the chief engineer visionary who came up with these patents, also has an amazing software product line that configures these things automatically. So it can spit out water systems like an assembly line. And that is so unique compared to the way the water industry works today. All right. So hopefully, Bobby, that we answered that. And I see that Kevin did a great job of talking about that too. So thank you, Kevin. All right. What's going on with the economic news? Crash recovery. It's crazy. This morning, 8:57 a.m. from our partner at SRAX, which is they help us market to our shareholder base. Futures tumble, 100 basis point rate hike is on the table. We're bearish, blah, blah, blah. So then 12:16 p.m., market made fresh lows and bounced hard. Technical bounce off the 3,500 level. This is the S&P 500. So he all of a sudden he changed his tune. Personally, I think it's kind of a dead cat bounce, but like I said, we'll see. Let's take a look at some of the fundamentals behind all this. Look at France. This is a graph. The blue is the monthly deficit in billions of euros, and the red is the 12-month deficit in billions of euros. And they're basically falling off a cliff. That's like, oh my God, 15.3 billions on 1 month and 139 billions on 1 year. That is the new deficit, and they are not stopping. So there's a lot of issues with debt. Now, there's another more important issue, perhaps, which is that we're watching Amazon. Actually, its year-on-year sales growth is dropping, which is why they had a second Prime Day this year. Interesting. They're trying to backfill. Of course, there was a big growth They were booming going into Q1 of 2020, even before the pandemic. They were on a real tear. They maintained it throughout 2020, but then in 2021 onward, it kind of went off. I don't think it has anything to do with Amazon being incompetent. I think it has a lot to do with demand destruction. There's much less demand. People are spending less, and where they're spending money is on things they can't control, like their mortgage went up or whatever, gasoline more expensive, that kind of stuff. So this is a really interesting graph, and it really says that we are in a demand pullback for the economy. Conclusion, we're not done. Okay, so you heard Ken talk about how water can save your portfolio. And so I've recorded today something which we're going to be using that kind of tells that story. Here we go. Hi, I'm Riggs Eccleberry, and if you're like me, you are dealing with a portfolio problem. The markets are not happy, they're getting worse, and going to cash is okay, except that cash itself is losing its value by the day. So what do, right? I guess tough it out. Yeah, that'll work out over time, but meanwhile, the spouse isn't very happy, right? So what do? Well, one of the ways to deal with this is to invest in something that is just new, a strong, vital asset that is just beginning to make its run, an asset that has been coming out of a government monopoly and is now being done more and more by businesses. And this is called decentralized water, where businesses do their own water treatment, right? And a lot of people are doing this, some pretty big players like JP Morgan Capital, and they're doing very well, believe me. So how can you participate? Well, my company is the only one that enables everyday investors like you and me to actually participate in the profits, the annuities from these water projects. And they're set up, basically on a pay per gallon basis, just so the business is basically paying the way they're accustomed to paying the city, but they're paying our program, which is called Water on Demand. And you as an investor participate. Now, it's great because, first of all, there's some royalties. There's a measure of protection by the fact you can enforce the royalties with the water assets. That's built right in. There's also some amazing benefits in terms of stock, early stock that is potentially valuable. All these good things are stuff that you should discuss with my co-founder, Ken Berenger. And he will tell you exactly how it can work, and he will show you how your portfolio is here, water on demand is here, and all of a sudden, things are potentially very good. So this is worth doing. I really feel that you have the potential to right-size your portfolio. I kind of think of it as, Apple 1984, right? It's like so early and so powerful that it can deliver some amazing upside for you and your family. So with that, I recommend you contact Ken. All you got to do to schedule with him is in your browser, put oc.gold/Ken. oc.gold/Ken. Schedule with him. I think that it's going to be very, very good. And I wish you the very best in this economy. We all deserve to do well. Thank you. And that is that. And I'm going to invite Mr. Ken Berenger onto the screen to talk things over. Can you hear me?
Aloha.
Well, I like this direction. You know why? Because I myself am frustrated about my portfolio. I'm like, Ameritrade, I went to cash.
I stopped looking. Just when they say if you want to get out of a hole, stop digging. And here's the thing, like, we're fairly sophisticated people, right? We should be able to do this. None of the old rules have applied. So I heard someone describe it today in a very, so when financial people get on CNBC or MSNBC or Fox Business, they tend to get these analysts who are extremely, analysts, right? And they use they use language that people's eyes roll up in their head. But essentially what this fella said was, look, we stomped on the gas 2 years ago to COVID and accelerated a process that had inflation was rampant since 2010.
Yes.
Now, where was inflation? And like silence, he goes, it was in the stock market. All the bailouts in 08 and 09, it flooded the zone to the banks and companies. And what did they do? They bought stock so basically the wealthiest people in the country doubled the price of the stock market in a couple of years time frame. So that's why your chicken cutlets hadn't tripled, right? Now, the raise of interest rates have continued to partially fuel that, people are running to the market. But now with the raise of interest rate, people are going, well, I can go into instruments. Okay. But another interesting thing is we had the ability in the 80s, and we had a terrible thing, inflation in the 80s, but in the 80s, we built things. We had tradesmen, we had industries, we had energy. The dollar being linked to oil. Everyone's saying, look how strong the dollar is. The dollar is failing up. The rest of the world, if they want to buy oil, they have to buy it in US dollars.
Yeah.
Therefore, they have to buy our dollars. Okay. So they're kind of, it's that artificial price increase in the US dollar. And as energy prices get higher, we print more money to supply them with more dollars to buy, instead of just them allowing them to suck the money we've printed up, that we just keep printing it more. And today's announcement, of course, the COLA, the cost of living adjustment for Social Security, was almost 9%. So we already have a system that's bankrupt. We already have a country that's printing money. And now we're going to print 10% more right out of the gate. So this is
services doubled, right? The interest
at least doubled, right? The place I'm buying in Clearwater, the mortgage payment I'm going to be paying now is double what I would have been paying. Of course, I would have paid a lot more 6 months
exactly
ago.
With the principle of the house.
I comfort myself with that. Yes.
It's like bonds. When interest rate on bonds go up, the value of the bond goes down, right? So your yield is really what it's all about.
And someone said to me, "Well, why don't you wait for the bottom?" I said, "I don't know where the bottom is. I know that my cash is losing 20% a year. I don't think the properties I'm buying are going to lose 20% in the next year. If they do, I'm even."
Well, not only that, rents aren't going to go down because people got to live somewhere.
Rents will go up. Right, rents will go up exactly because it's the renters market. So there's going to be some bright spots, but everybody who's in all of these traditional assets they know it's just basically, it's like you're on the bull, and you know how like they tie their hand, they wrap their hand to the horn, because it's gonna, they just gotta hang on. And
but the point I was making in my video was you can let that be.
Yes.
And wait for it, hodl, hang on for dear life. Just let it be. And because the water demand investment is so privileged, the people who get it, people talk to you, they go, "Thank you, Ken, for the opportunity." When they get it, Lord.
Yes. Well, no, you see the light go on. Look, there's a lot of layers. It's a fairly complex set of ideas. I think what we try to do every day is working on simplifying it.
Yes.
But once the light goes on, here's how I can simply put it. You have the ability to be in an asset that has yet to be monetized, and you have all the benefits of being an Apple investor of 1984 attached to the same asset, which hasn't been monetized. What part don't you like?
And it offsets your
very unfair question, I know.
And you'll be able to brag to your spouse, like, "Yeah, you know what? My amazing judgment."
Yeah, I was there. Right, I was there. Yeah, you were one of them. Yeah, I was one of them. So it's a and I do think, and look, I get the whole spouse thing. I'm not worried about Amazon, by the way.
I don't think
Amazon.
As long
as my wife, my wife's going to keep them going. It's fine.
I keep thinking about the people who made money from cardboard. Lord.
Right. The cardboard manufacturers are killing it. But getting back, joking aside, Amazon is what did I say to you earlier on the phone? If clicking a button and getting stuff delivered to your house slows down, right? It's not the price of gas that's preventing you from going to the mall or the supermarket, right? This is literally people going, okay, I'm pulling my horns in. It's the bare necessities, right? Steaks, $18 a pound, right? So, I told you what I did, right?
But then let's look at our core business, the water industry. For example, right now we have a national account. They are expanding. They provide interstate services. I can't say more than that. And they're expanding fast. Why? Because people are driving more. They're driving instead of flying because flying has turned into a total disaster.
Yep.
And as a result, they're opening up all of these interstate activities, shall we say. And they have to have pump stations. They have to have pump stations because of the gravity issue. We are like printing money. And I just want to say that we are planning our next announcement will be about the pump station business, how it's gone from being, just 10% of our business in the first half of the year to, I think, 60% of our current quotations in October. So it is really on a roll.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very exciting situation. And what's great is they're like pancakes. Like, what it is, it's a shaft, pump at the bottom, controls at the top, roll it out.
It's like, it's a fan with water, So here's another thing that's important for the prospective investor to recognize. Whatever the dollar is doing, water is doing it 4 times faster. The recipient of those royalties will weather that storm.
Yes.
So, okay, if the water on demand listing event takes a year or two, okay, a couple of years, that's fine, right? And as we build this portfolio of valuable properties, if that begins to elevate the core part of, the Origin Clear portion of this thing, well, then, while you're waiting to get these revenues, you can have some liquidity events. I don't think that that's really out there. You kind of pick a poison. You want to take a chance on equities, right? You could be right, could be wrong. And they're already so wrong. I think the appetite for risk when a guy looks at his portfolio down 35 or 40% is completely different. So providing an equity event that doesn't take on that, maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong thing, I think is one of the most attractive features.
Yeah, you don't want to roll the dice. You don't want to roll the dice. This is the most common sense offering we've ever made. I think is brilliant. And I love the fact that you're out there creating every single day. People who want to talk to Ken and get the real dope should just put oc.go/Ken to schedule their call or email invest@originclear.com. I think you got a few slots available still, maybe?
I do. And I could always make one.
Good.
I'm excited. Things are really humming. I'm happy with where we are. I'm sad that people are suffering. Everyone's hurting, but I'm even more proud that the power of what we put together can help make it right. The way this thing is set up to kind of, what was the word we were discussing? I think offset, to offload a lot of the risk, to offset a lot of the, current downside.
Portfolio transformation.
It has that potential. Sure.
And by the way, you were talking about, it's going to take a while to ramp up these water systems, but in fact, we are not letting that money sit idle. It's being worked, and investors are going to be extremely happy with the royalty checks they get because we have chosen to pass on the benefits of working that money directly to the investors. So it's going to be.
I do get asked about that, so hopefully we'll be able to provide a little bit more detail on that shortly.
Well, no, there will definitely be some payouts happening within the next 30 days, and that's going to be very exciting.
Beautiful. Okay.
Okay, everyone. Well, listen, it's been great. Thank you very much for being here. It's been a good show, and it didn't go over long, which is good. And next week, we will have that big announcement about pump stations, more educational about how it's going and so forth, and showing how the stats are going. It is really a strong business that it's our next spinoff. All will be in the press release, and we'll be discussing it further. I will interview Tom Marchicello on how it's going in our business. It's going to be very, very interesting. So everyone, do join us next week. We are continuing to be in the business of making water happen as the new gold.
Have a great evening, folks. Thank you.
Enjoy the weekend, everyone.